Welcome to Ninjamobil Art, and today's project, which is making a little carbon foot to go in the side of the diffuser. Looking at it now, I guess I could have made that in aluminium, but it wouldn't be very nice, and it would all be buckled, and it is the carbon dart, so carbon's the right thing. There's a little mould I made yesterday, little tool, a bit of form ply, MDF, and some MDF and body filler. So the rear wheel sits there, and this little curve seems to be something that diffusers like to, the airflow that goes in underneath energizes the vortex under here, which seems to be nice, helps things, and that's the edge of the rear floor under the car, edge of the chassis. So it's just this little bit here we're making. Anyway, I'll paint that and we'll make a moulding. Here's one of our moulds. It's now got it's been rubbed back, and it's got the same coating of wax and mould releases on the wheel arches, you might remember. I thought I'd talk you through this in a bit more detail. Now this is unusual in that the tool surface, the mould, is underneath the component, so you won't see it. It'll be untooled surface outside, which will become obvious later on. And a couple of expensive newspaper templates to say, I want a bit of carbon like that, and a bit of carbon, I don't know, like that maybe, to make the two bits. So go and use those templates to cut them out. There are two ways of cutting the carbon fabric, both quite effective. It cuts really easily, either with a straight edge and a Stanley knife. Make sure you've got a nice fresh blade. And this little bit of aluminium I've got folded up. Make sure you've got some pressure on the edge, as opposed to a steel rule, which doesn't always grab on the edge. So that's a tip. Or pair of scissors. Like so. Here we are, ready to mix up our epoxy resin. Put that stuff there. Rubber gloves, very important. Makes you think your hands are clean if they're not, even if they're not. So a little plastic cup on there. Zero the scales. So the mixing ratio for this stuff's 5 to 1. Not 1 in 5. 5 to 1. We'll put, at a guess, about that much in there, probably too much. That's 140 grams. We've got the resin mixed up and sitting in that tray. It's in a tray to keep it nice and thin so it doesn't go off so fast. There's the mould, just a little point about the mould. Quite a decent sized radius all down here and down here, which is because carbon fibre is quite a stiff fibre, which is why we use it. And if you've got sharp corners, it doesn't want to go around them, so that's good for the aero and the structure and for the laminating process. So the first stage, is to give the mould a good wetting out before we drop the fabric on top. And the mould's got a good coating of resin on top of it there. And next thing to do is lay down our first layer of carbon fabric. Like that. And because this is the tool surface will be underneath the part, and the bit you'll see is the untooled surface, this lot. I'm going to try and be nice and tidy with it, otherwise it'll look untidy. This is going to be a long job today because it's so cold, the resin's really thick, it's going to be hard to wet it out. but same old story. And for this component, seeing it's only a little bitty thing, one layer of carbon, one layer of glass, one layer of carbon, unlike the body shell which has got 2 layers of glass in the middle of it. It'll be sufficient for this little job. There's our bottom skin in place. This piece overlaps the back piece, which is a shame because you get a rough bit there, but overlaps quite handy because this will be 3 layers, this will be 3 layers, this will be 6. So it sort of makes a little, like a little rib to make it a bit stronger locally, which helps you out. There's a layer of glass. Don't know whether you can hear me with all that racket the rain's making, but that's all nicely wetted out now, 3 layers. Just to finish it off nicely, we do this. Run a set of rollers over it, which just make sure all the air's out. And it's all settled down nicely. There. And there. When you hear it make a squelchy noise, that's air coming out. That one. And that one in there. Make sure it's sitting in that corner nicely, if you can. And to get a really even finish on it, be a bit careful doing this. Oop. Trying to squeegee over it. And it just evens the resin out a bit on top. All good. Job done. Here we are a day later with our cured laminate, which we'll look at that. Attempt to pop off the mould and see what we've got. It's actually still a little bit, because it's so cold at the moment, I think it's still a little bit, just a tiny bit green. But here we go. Yeah. Got to be careful when it's green that you don't actually damage it taking it off, because it's not as strong as it's going to be. Nearly there. There we go. So there's our component. It weighs about nothing. And I don't know if I mentioned, but I put a scribe line on the mould along here before I made the piece. So I've got a trim line. And somebody asked about trimming it, so I'll show you that as well. So to trim it, so this stuff's a bit rubbery, but it's an ordinary pair of wisp tin snips. Right in knuckle. This cuts like cardboard. When it's trimmed, finish it off with a bit of sandpaper. So here's our finished trimmed up component. It's quite tidy. Because of these nice radii on the tool, it's ended up being nicely packed down and fully laminated and no voids or anything. Fairly pleasing. Obviously nobody sees it under there because it's underneath the car, but it still counts. weighs about 200 grams. I'll let that sit there and finish curing for another day or so before I go and fit it to the car. And for completeness, here's our little diffuser foot fitted in place, like so, which gives us a little teeny tiny diffuser. And there it is with the wheel fitted. You can see its job there, just sealing up that gap around the tyre. And over here is the engine, which still doesn't run, which is getting a bit frustrating to be honest, but we'll get there.